Good afternoon. How many people here think that good jobs matter to families? You know, the heart and soul of any society is production. The way that you establish the standard of living or raise the standard of living of a society is to produce things. You can do it through agriculture, you can do it through mining and extraction, you can do it through innovation by introducing intellectual product, or you can produce things by manufacturing. You add wealth to your society in those four ways. You know, it's wonderful to have Burger Kings and Taco Bells and Walgreens, but retail stores just trade dollars around. They don't improve a society's standard of living. We're lucky in the United States. We're the leading industrial manufacturing country in the world. China is very competitive and is closing in a lot of ways on American manufacturing, but we're still the #1 manufacturing country in the world. The state of Illinois is heart and soul of American manufacturing. You are sitting today near 4 of the most important manufacturing zip codes in the United States. You know, they talk a lot about how Detroit built the tanks that won World War II. Well, the parts that they assembled were made in the state of Illinois and shipped to Michigan for assembly. Today in the state of Illinois, 700,000 families depend on manufacturing for a middle-class lifestyle. Manufacturing jobs pay between 25% and 40% more than retail jobs or service jobs do. So manufacturing, after agriculture, is the second most critical industry in the state of Illinois. And manufacturing is at risk of bad tax policy. The proponents down in Springfield say we can fix everything if you just let us change the income tax. And don't worry, we're not going to tax you, we're not going to tax you, we're going to tax that guy way over there. It's not about taxing regular Illinoisans, it's about soaking the rich. They're only going to tax the people that make more than $250,000, just trust them. There were three strong protections that they tried to write into the 1970 Constitution. So far, the Democratic legislature, with the cooperation of the Supreme Court, have ignored 2 of them. One of them was the balanced budget requirement. Illinois has a constitutional requirement that each year the General Assembly balance its expenditures with their tax receipts. Well, there's $2.6 billion worth of unpaid bills sitting in Springfield for the last 7 years that are all unconstitutional. You haven't heard a peep out of the Attorney General for the state of Illinois. You haven't heard a peep out of the Democratic Party. But I mean, that's one of the constitutional protections that they've chosen to ignore and nobody's enforcing. The second constitutional protection that they wrote into the 1970 Constitution was an attempt to prevent the parties from controlling redistricting. They wrote a requirement that if the 2 parties couldn't agree, that they would go to a coin toss at the end of that disagreement, and that coin toss would be such a risk that the legislature would compromise and do redistricting in a bipartisan way. Well, we've seen how that's worked in the state of Illinois, as Mike Madigan has drawn the last 3 maps. So 2 of them are gone. The last constitutional protection that the Springfield mafia down there are after is the requirement that we have a flat tax in the state of Illinois. It means everybody participates in the income tax at a flat rate. Okay, no, there's no 27,000 pages and 7 volumes of the Illinois income tax. It's a flat rate, simple tax that everybody can understand, that everybody participates. If you make $1 million a year, you're paying your income tax on that $1 million, so you're paying 20 times as much as I pay. So if you make a lot of money, you pay a lot of Illinois tax. But it's not graduated. We don't let the legislature pick and choose who they're going to help and who they're going to hurt. Okay, it's not a complicated tax. You know, they say in Washington, D.C., there's about 27,000 registered lobbyists that lobby Congress. One estimate is about 24,000 of those, or about 80% of them, lobby one thing out in Washington, D.C. They lobby the tax code. They're not lobbying agricultural policy or health policy or defense policy. They're lobbying the tax code. The Illinois Constitution prevents that by requiring a flat tax. But Governor Pritzker and Mike Madigan and Senate President John Cullerton want to take that away from the state of Illinois. Now, think about what the impacts of that would be. Unlike, if you raise the cost of a Burger King, okay, and there's another Burger King down the street, or a McDonald's, or a Taco Bell, and they all have the same cost increase, pretty much everybody just pays another nickel or 2 for their sandwich. But if you take manufacturers in the state of Illinois, those 700,000 families that depend on manufacturing, and you raise their cost of production when they're competing in a world stage, what that means is we lose jobs. We lose this order, we lose that order, we can't make enough money, and that work goes to Southeast Asia, or it goes to Eastern Europe, or it goes to Mexico, or it goes to China. The bids that my manufacturers bid on go to the 10th of a penny on parts. It's that competitive. And we're lucky in the United States because we've got great manufacturers, good engineers, hard-working people that are winning those bids and bringing manufacturing back to the United States with the help of President Trump and his thoughtful work on China. But we're not going to keep winning in Illinois if our tax code penalizes people who are productive. Now, these are employers that employ middle-class families. Okay, these jobs, 80% of them include health insurance. The vast majority of them include retirement benefits. So these are the jobs that are at stake when they casually down in Springfield make decisions about taking away the last of the constitutional protections in the 1970 Constitution. Now, people will tell you this is not about taxing the middle class. Today, the proposal, the statute that they passed that will be in effect if we repeal the constitutional protection, makes it appear as if we're not going to raise taxes. But the new revenue raised by that only raises about $1.1 billion. We already told you that they've got $2.8 billion in unpaid bills from previous years sitting in Springfield. We have an unfunded pension of about $143 billion. How are they going to solve that problem with that $1.1 billion? Well, the truth is they're not. This is the opening gambit. If we can pass this removal of the protection, Katie barred the door, they'll be able to raise rates on whoever they want. They can have as many brackets as they want. They can have as many write-offs as they want. They can have all the deductions they want. That's what they're proposing. They didn't offer a change that was protected in the Constitution. They're just repealing the single rate requirement in the Illinois Constitution. So we need to be prepared. And don't believe the three big lies. You'll hear the three big lies over and over and over again. You'll hear that the problem in Springfield with the pensions and the budget is they don't have enough revenue. That's absolutely not true. Illinois is a high tax state. We're in the top 5 in the nation in the amount of taxes we take compared to gross national product or earnings of its residents. Illinois has got plenty of money if they decide how to spend it. Budget problems in Springfield, the last 5 times that they've had a general tax increase, spending didn't decrease, spending increased more than the increase in the revenue. Springfield has an addiction to other people's money. And they're not going to solve it with more money. Illinois doesn't get better with higher taxes.
Yes. You told us the first big lie is there's not enough revenue. I didn't hear number 2 and number 3.
That tax increase will fix it. The last 5 tax increases resulted in greater spending than the tax increase brought in. And the third big lie is trust us. That the General Assembly is going to do just what they've always promised. Remember, the riverboats were going to solve, or the lottery was going to solve education. Riverboats were going to redevelop communities. Slot machines in every bar and tavern were going to solve the budgetary problems. Now we're going to sell marijuana. What's next on the list of the wizards in Springfield? Yes, sir.
Well, my question is, my memory, if I remember correctly, back during Nixon's era, they dismantled AT&T. And that seemed to be the beginning of the dismantling of our manufacturing business. And we have our cell phones now made over in China and other countries.
Well, you're right about our cell phones being made overseas now, but it really wasn't the breakup of AT&T that started it. It really was 25 years of internationalists in Washington, D.C. who believed that if you export jobs to China and to Mexico, and you help them develop a middle class, that their societies will stabilize. Now, that was a wonderful thing coming out of universities, and an idea that if you allowed them to import more product in the United States, that they would develop a middle class and their societies would get better. It just hasn't worked. So for the first time in 30 years or more, we have a president who's not the internationalist, who doesn't believe, he believes first in the United States and in manufacturing here. The tariffs that we, U.S. goods, as of 2 years ago, were still paying tariffs to be shipped into Europe that were part of the Marshall Plan for the reconstruction of Europe. And we had 5 presidents in a row who wouldn't change tariff policy because they thought it was important to develop the rest of the world. Barack Obama spoke to it eloquently. He thought, we can't worry about the jobs in Ohio and in Indiana and Illinois. It's important for us to help other countries develop. So we now have a president that says, let's get it done first at home. And I think we all ought to be really, really proud of his policy. And little by little, we're winning back. There's a thing called, everybody heard about all the manufacturing jobs going to Mexico and to China, and that was a problem for about 12 years. But now the reverse is actually happening, in part because of the tariffs, but even more importantly, because American manufacturers have retooled, they're retraining, they're redesigning. We produce more manufactured product today in 2019 in the Chicago metropolitan area than we did in 1999, and we do it with 1/3 less employees. So we've lowered the cost, we've increased productivity, and that increases the wealth of the society. So we're going to win back the cell phones, I hope.
On the flat tax, do they have the wording that will go on the ballot yet?
Yes, yeah, the words, the repeal language is already passed. It's at the Secretary of State's office. It will be mailed to every registered voter in the state of Illinois. It's on the internet. Essentially, they're repealing the restriction that the only income tax we can have in the state of Illinois is a flat tax. So once they take that out, okay, the progressive income tax is not in the Constitution. Okay, once they take out the prohibition on a progressive, they're going to pass it by statute. So they can change it whenever they want to, each legislative session.
But what I'm getting at is how, I'm a precinct committee, how do we tell our people how to vote for that so it doesn't pass? Because you know how they kind of word that once in a while,
Yeah.
and it is really tricky, and people think, okay, we're voting, and then if the bill passes, it's like, oh my goodness, you know.
I think the proposition language is, or will be something like, should Illinois repeal the requirement that to have a flat rate income tax? The question will be pretty straightforward on the ballot. The question is what's going to be on TV, paid for by lots of people, is that this is a new fair tax. It's a good way. We're going to make the millionaires pay for our desires. But we'll try to get you the language.
So, how do you vote? Yes or no?
You want to vote no on the proposition to remove the prohibition.
I just wanted to make one comment. I think your message to us is very important. All of the district people that are running in Illinois, their message ought to be loud and clear, and it ought to be that Illinois is bankrupt. Illinois has $150 billion, as you point out, in pensions, and another 40, I believe, in medical costs that is not funded.
Right.
And now, with the income tax increase and taking away that protection, we're going to turn the keys over to the people to let them run the finances when they got us into this mess of $200 billion in debt.
You couldn't be more right. We'd be turning the keys over with a 12-pack of beer to a group of teenagers that have already been on THC. So it would be a terrible mistake. And you need to know, if you go back to that timeline real quick, that this hasn't always been true. When George Ryan left office, the last time the Republicans had one chamber, the pensions in the state of Illinois were funded at nearly 80%. We were paying our bills in 14 to 21 days. We had a small surplus in the Treasury. So this has not always been a problem in the state of Illinois. This problem originates with the Blagojevich election and the Democrats having the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court without anybody to interdict them. And if you let this same group, which still controls the executive branch, the Supreme Court, the House and the Senate, if you turn over your income tax to them, don't be surprised if the 46,000 left Illinois last year, it'll be 460,000 the year after this passes. You guys have a great conference.